Now, across the country, they're looking at the numbers involving teenagers in this epidemic. And on our WHBC Newsline right now, we bring in addiction specialist and program director at Taylor Recovery Center, Ryan Davis. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So let's talk about this, what just recently came out from the CDC. More U.S. teens dying of opioid overdoses?
Yes. The reports are very disheartening, but they're not surprising, to be honest with you. Teens are getting more and more into these heavier drugs as far as heroin and, the opioid painkillers, and not, drinking alcohol and smoking weed like it was back in the 70s. So that's why those rates are rising, and it's very alarming.
So are they getting pills, say, from their parents or grandparents, medicine cabinet, and then that's leading to stronger things? I mean, how is this all coming about, do you think? Why do they think it's okay to go for a much harder drug?
That could be what's happening. That's part of it, getting pills from their parents' medicine cabinets, like you said, but it's even more accessible these days on the streets. They don't even have to resort to going that route. The big pharmaceutical companies are getting a big blame for, flooding the marketplace with strong opioid painkillers. And what they can do is, they can reduce or limit the number of painkillers and the strength of the opioid painkillers that they're prescribing to people, and this will dramatically reduce the amount of overdose and addictive use of these drugs.
Okay, and so including that, are there any other tips for parents maybe who are looking for ways to make sure their kids don't get involved in this?
They need to address the crisis aggressively through prevention and treatment, and also be very involved in their kids' lives. Know who they're with, know who they're hanging out with. I would even say if you're suspicious at all, you can go buy a drug test at your local Walgreens or CVS. So go buy a drug test your kids on a regular basis if you have a suspicion. That way you can get ahead of this problem before it becomes a major issue in your teen's life.
As an addiction specialist, are you seeing the opioid crisis increasing in any other age group in particular?
Yes, it's increasing all across the board. The older crowd, the older age group, they're more inclined to do like the painkillers, the opioid painkillers. The teens and the millennials, 20s to 30s, they're increasing their use of heroin, and all of these deaths, these overdoses most of them are unintentional because they don't know what's in the drugs anymore. The drug fentanyl came on the scene in 2014, and it's killing people at an alarming rate. So yes, it's increasing across the board for sure.
So again, you would say going after where it's coming from, the creation of it, the prescribing of these strong painkillers and things like that. That's where we should start.
Definitely, and we need to make it, make people more aware of how dangerous these drugs really are. And we're really grateful in our field for people like you guys who have a platform to get this out there so people know how dangerous and what these drugs can actually do to someone. So we need more and more people like you and, to start addressing the issue so we become more aware as a society.
Addiction specialist and program director at Taylor Recovery Center, Ryan Davis, thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you so much for having me on. You have a great day.
You too.
Ryan Davis, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
You live in Houston? You got the hurricane bearing down on you, bud.
We sure do, man. I'm actually at the grocery store now trying to do some last-minute preparations there.
Ryan is addiction specialist, program director at Taylor Recovery Center. Were you an addict?
I was not, but I had family members who were, and that's what drove me to get into this field. They went through treatment, and I was a part of that and helping them get into treatment. And it was a very fulfilling and rewarding thing when they came out and stayed sober. So I was like, that's what I want to do with my life.
The drug overdose with opiates, can start with prescription medicine, then branches off to heroin, and then people die. I mean, the numbers are it's up 15% from the 15 to 19-year-olds alone, up 15%. Ryan, how do we get our arms around this? How do we stop this epidemic?
It's alarming. And, it's very disheartening, but it's also, it's not surprising. So what we need to do is, a lot of people are blaming the big pharmaceutical companies for flooding the marketplace with high-powered, high-strength opioid painkillers. And what we need to do is limit the number that we're giving out and reduce the strength of them and get ahead of this before it gets too bad. And what we need to do with the younger generation, the teens, parents need to be more aware and be very involved in their lives. If they see anything that is out of the ordinary or they're suspicious about anything, they need to start drug testing their kids and aggressively combat this by prevention and treatment for sure.
Because some will say, oh, they're just teenagers, they don't want to talk to me, but maybe there's more than that going on, Ryan.
Exactly. And that's the main sign right there. When you notice any change in your teenager, whether it be they become more distant or, they're hanging out with different people that you don't know, you need to be aware of this and get ahead of that situation before it gets worse, Like you said, people, and most of the overdoses are unintentional because they don't know they're putting fentanyl in the heroin these days, and people just don't know what they're putting in their bodies anymore.
Yeah.
So we need to be really aware of it.
Any way to describe the addiction? Any way to describe how bad you need the next one?
Oh man, that's a great question. There's nothing like it. It's so bad that I see people every day at my center in Houston. Every day, how bad it is when they come in. Even after a 30-day stay in a treatment facility, they still have that phenomenon of craving. And the only way to combat it these days, the high opioids, is with a lot of treatment, a lot of counseling, even maybe some different kind of medicine. There's medicine that'll stop the cravings and things like that. So we need to make people more aware of these options for their kids.
And how are your family members doing following their addictions? Did they recover?
They're doing phenomenal. They become productive members of society again, back in the workplace. So, and a couple of them were teenagers, like we're talking about now.
Yeah.
They become parents. They got back into school, got degrees. So I know treatment works, and it may be hard, and it may be, it may be scary, but it's definitely necessary, and we need to get more people into treatment to treat this very horrible disease.
Ryan Davis, getting supplies. Do you grab ding-dongs? You just stay healthy when you're grabbing hurricane stuff.
Oh no, I got honey buns, I got pies. So, we're getting ready.
Oh man, he's got to have the stuff if you get flooded in, man. You better be eating those honey buns. Let's go.
Everyone else is getting water, and I'm getting honey buns.
Well, you'll be the last guy on the chimney, man. I got the honey buns. All right, my friend. Listen, how do people find Taylor Recovery Center?
They can go to our website. It's www.taylorrecovery.com, and all of our information's on there about how to get people into treatment, and they can just reach out to us there.
There's no shame in needing help, is there?
At all. Actually, we praise people because it's so hard when they call to make that first step.
Yeah.
And we want to make them feel like they made the right decision because they absolutely have.
Ryan Davis, appreciate your time, my friend. Be safe now.
Thank you so much, guys. Y'all have a good day.
You too.
Got to give equal time, right? 7:27. Hi. Wake up call. All over Friday. So a new University of Virginia study says the number of deaths due to heroin and opioids overdoses have been severely underreported. Apparently from 2014. So 2008 through 2014, mortality rates were 24% higher for opioids, 22% higher for heroin. States that were understating the numbers: Pennsylvania, Indiana, New Jersey, and Arizona. Let's talk about something maybe a little bit more distressing if you are a parent. The numbers for 15 to 19-year-olds rose 15% for males and 35% for females from the years 2013 to 2015. Wow. Addiction specialist and program director at Taylor Recovery Center, Ryan Davis, joining us on the Wake Up Call. Ryan, welcome in.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So what's going on? What's going on with our young people? We have an epidemic on our hands, and, I mean, the overview is what?
We do have a major epidemic. It's a crisis. And, the reports are disheartening, but not at all surprising. Drugs, specifically opioids, they're a new product on the scene, and they keep evolving, and they're becoming more and more addictive and dangerous than they were in the past years. So we need to address the crisis aggressively through prevention and lots of treatment.
We get news and reports of kids, and they've been doing it for generations, trying to get that crazy high. Doing some incredibly dangerous things, and some of them are kind of hard to. I mean, from somebody who in high school, maybe beer, but nothing like what you hear out there in today's world. I can't really relate to some of it. What at Taylor? What are you seeing? I mean, what's the craziest thing that you've seen that teens are using to get a buzz?
Most of all nowadays it's mainly heroin, and heroin, meth is making a big comeback on the scene, which is horrible. But mostly it's heroin, and what's so dangerous about the heroin is they're mixing it with fentanyl on the street, and our teens and everyone that's actively using intravenously, they don't know what they're putting in their bodies, and it's so harmful, and that's why we have so much accidental overdose. The studies have shown most overdoses are unintentional, which is a very sad thing.
That was going to be one of my questions. Just trying to keep up with the Jones and trying to be cool. How many people were kind of out of their comfort zone and out of their knowledge zone, and were doing things that they had no really knowledge or education about?
That's right. And what happens is they start off using like prescription painkillers that they may get from a friend, or anything they might get from a parent in the med cabinet. And the prescription painkillers and heroin, they actually have a problematic relationship. Since they act similarly in the brain, so taking even one prescription painkiller as directed can increase one's susceptibility to becoming hooked on the other. So that's what we have to address. And as parents, you have to be aware of what your kids are doing. You have to be involved in their lives. If you notice any change at all in their behavior, you need to be on top of it. There's drug testing kits that you can buy at CVS or Walgreens and test them so you can get ahead of this before it gets really bad and spins out of control, and get them into treatment and the treatment that they need.
You talk about being involved, and some parents I talk to say that they're involved, and they have kind of like a whitewashed image of their kids, and I'm thinking of one parent in particular, and their parent, we're talking about like a sophomore, junior, both of them are in high school. She says, "Oh, they never throw parties. They don't. I don't think they've even had boyfriend girlfriend. I mean, there's like this a little bit of assumption that there's no way it could be them. But I'm sure some of the parents that had issues with their parents or their kids thought that too. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
Go
we'd
ahead.
all like to think that as parents that our kids are, straight-laced and angels. I remember even going back to when I was a teenager, I wasn't using heavy drugs, but I was smoking marijuana and drinking in high school, and my parents had no clue, So what needs to happen is you have to sit down and speak with your kids, on a daily basis, make them talk to you even though they don't want to. It could be hard, but those are the telltale signs that something's going on. They're becoming more distant, hanging out in their room, secluding themselves, hanging out with other people that you really don't know that they're associating with. So, that's why we have to be, more on top of what our kids are doing these days.
Hanging out in your room, though, that describes 98% of the kids out there because they've got their smartphone or their computer working. And, I mean, you really have to be proactive. And if you're talking about a drug test, that's probably not, that's not impossible to think that should be part of everyday use.
Definitely. I mean, if you see any signs at all that their behaviors are changing and you notice anything going on in their lives, I would be proactive and give them drug tests so that, you can get them into treatment before, like I said, it spirals out of control. Once that phenomenon of craving, that addiction hits them and you're not on top of it, you're almost too late. And with the drugs that are going around on the streets these days, we cannot be too late, because once they use you never know when it's their last time.
A lot of pressure on the parents today. You've got the schools, trying to do what they can. What do we miss? Was there some important aspect of this conversation that we didn't cover?
No, basically, we need more people like you out there and that are getting the word out. People with big platforms that can address the situation. In our industry, we strive to get on, radio and TV to make people more aware. So we need more people like you, more radio stations, TV stations. President Trump addressed the issue not too long ago. So we need to make a more focused effort to make people aware of how dangerous these drugs really are.
Taylor Recovery Center is where? And do you have a website?
We're in Houston, Texas. Our website is www.taylorrecovery.com. You can go on our website, ask questions. We have blogs on there about addiction and things of that nature. Our intake line phone numbers on there. You'll get our general manager, Courtney Nichols, who is an expert at addiction, and he can tell you where you need to go, how to get your loved one into treatment as soon as possible.
Are you in Houston right now, Ryan?
Yes, sir, I am.
Well, we appreciate, I'm sure there's a lot of concern with the weather and everything. Looks like it's going to go more westerly, which is a good thing, I guess, for those folks in Houston. But I've been there before for storms, and that's you don't want to mess around with those big-time storms in Houston, Texas.
True. We're hoping for the best here.
Yeah.
Houston floods really bad, so we're trying to prepare here at Taylor Recovery, make sure all of our clients are safe. And we have a great plan in place, so that's what we're doing as we speak.
Good thoughts and prayers going your way, Ryan. Be safe.
Thank you so much.
And the rate of opioid drug overdose deaths among older teenagers in the United States has taken a turn for the worse, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Let's talk about this on the News Radio 1040 WHO Newsmakers Line. It's addiction specialist and program director at Taylor Recovery Center, Ryan Davis. Ryan, welcome back to WHO in Des Moines. How are you, my friend?
Good morning, man. Thanks for having me on again.
Well, and Ryan, one of the reasons I'm very interested in talking to you is at the Taylor Recovery Center, you have some startling numbers. What percentage of your patients are you saying right now are opioid addicted?
90%, and that is, it may even be higher. Opioid addiction across the country is it's an epidemic, it's a crisis, and that's what we're seeing more and more of every day. We're seeing people come in at alarming rates every day, calling, trying to get into treatment because of opioid addiction.
So our CDC is reporting, Ryan, that the number of drug overdose deaths among 15 to 19-year-olds is rising in a startling fashion. Give me a look at your demographics, Ryan. Are you seeing more teenagers show up, more older adults? Who's getting hit the hardest by opioid addiction?
Well, here at Taylor Recovery in Houston, we're seeing a lot of 18 to, I would say, about 28-year-olds getting hit with the opioid addiction. We see the older generation, they're here and there, few and far between. They're more alcoholic still. So it's really the younger crowd that's getting hit with, the heroin problems and the painkillers.
Let me ask you, Ryan, I'll tell you why I was surprised by this stat, because when I'm thinking of opioid addiction in America, I'm thinking of an older adult that started out getting prescribed painkillers, and when the prescription ran out and the older adult couldn't get the prescription anymore, they started looking for other things like heroin. Why are teenagers getting addicted?
That does happen. And the teenagers, it could be for a number of reasons. They probably start off with painkillers because they're easily accessible everywhere. They may get it from, their parents' med cabinet or anyone of their friends off the street, things like that. And what's the big problem with that is, the opioid painkillers and heroin, they have a problematic relationship. So what that means is they act similarly in the brain. So taking one opioid painkiller, even as directed, can increase one's susceptibility to becoming hooked on the other, meaning heroin. So that's where we're seeing the problems. And, the opioids nowadays, it's a new product on the scene, and they keep evolving, and it's becoming more and more addictive and more dangerous with the stuff that they're putting in these drugs. So that's why we have to be very aware as parents of what our children are doing, and they're changing moods, changing behaviors, and we have to get ahead of it before the problem gets out of control.
Yeah, let's go to that, Ryan. I appreciate you mentioning that. You're a parent. You're disturbed by what you're hearing. What are the signs that my kid has an issue?
It's really hard to tell these days because, most kids, I would say they're secluding themselves or they're being very distant. But as I see now, most teenagers are that way anyway.
Right.
With our technology, they're glued to their phones, glued to their iPads, TVs, things of that nature. So I would notice any change, any slight change in behavior. You can tell as a parent if you're involved in their lives. I would sit down every day with my child and ask them about their day, ask them who they're hanging out with, make sure you know where they're going on a daily basis. And if you see any change, you can go buy a standard drug test at any CVS or Walgreens out there. I would drug test my kids before before it spirals out of control and give them the help that they need before it gets too bad.
Yeah, let me ask you about, we're talking, Ryan, overdoses here. Are kids taking too much, or, as you said, is there a lot of instances where really bad things are getting mixed in with drugs like heroin, and that's what's causing the deaths that we're seeing?
Yeah, so it's both, actually. So some kids are taking too much. They think their tolerance is a bit more than what it is. But more often than not, what I'm seeing these days is, they're mixing fentanyl in these drugs, in the heroin. And
yeah,
they're not knowing what they're putting in their body. And they're putting it in their body intravenously, which is even more dangerous than it would be, than doing it any other kind of way. So they don't know what they're putting in their body. Most overdoses these days are unintentional. The research has shown they're unintentional. So that's where it is. It's the fentanyl that we need to get a hold of, get a control on the fentanyl. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest problem in our country right now.
And Ryan, as a guy on the front line, what roles do doctors and drug companies have in helping you get a handle on this opioid crisis in our country?
So a lot of people are blaming big pharmaceutical companies, for flooding the market with these very powerful opioids. And what they can do is, in my opinion, limit, if somebody goes in with a condition and they require a painkiller, mm-hmm. they need to limit the number the amount that they're giving out and the strength of it in milligrams. I'm seeing so many high doses. People come into my treatment center prescribed to these painkillers, and which we don't allow them to take. And these doses are alarming. It's
Right.
like they need to get a handle on that. We need to try to regulate the amount of pills that they're handing out to these patients.
That's addiction specialist and program director at Taylor Recovery Center, Ryan Davis. Ryan, you're on the front lines. Always appreciate talking to you. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on.